All right, welcome to the final chapter. Essentially, this is basically, I mean, you don't have to know how to do this. If you really are uncomfortable with it, you can try to do it without it. The exam should be timed, other than the one quiz, everything should be timed fairly well enough that you can get away without doing it. But the idea is for at least the exams, you could skip this if you're really uncomfortable with it. But it's actually kind of fun, I always find. And basically what it is we know that the premises, if the premises are true and the conclusion is false, that we have an invalid argument. So what we can do to test this is just simply assume the premises are true. For example, on this one, just assume that they're true and the conclusion is false. And if that's the case, then what we do is we simply say, okay, well, let's assume the conclusion is false. So R would have to be false, which would mean that R would have to be false. And then what you would do is you would say, well, if blank horseshoe false, what does it have to be? If it's true, it would be false. So this would have to be, the antecedent would have to be true. I'm sorry, false. Which means that the, that means that the dot here has to be false, which means that either P has to be false, or P has to be true while Q is false, or P has to be false while Q is true. And if that were the case, then you could do P and Q false. But what you would do is you would do this, and you would move that across, and you would realize that it is possible for, in a line where P is true and Q is false, this would be true. And on a line where P is true and Q is false, the dot would be false. And if R was false, that the horseshoe would be false, true, while the R would be false here, meaning that it would be possible to have a line in which the premises are true and the conclusion is false. So basically what you're doing is you're saying, hey, look, it is possible to have it. You don't have to do all the lines, you just do the line that proves invalidity. And if you do it, you then highlight it or circle it and you would write invalid. If it works out, you know it's invalid. And basically, you just save yourself doing all these extra lines, because you would have had to have done 8 or 16 or 32 or 64 lines, and you don't have to do it now. And so all you do is you just come along and you say, assume the conclusion is false and the premises are true. So the way for this to be true would be for this to be false, and the way for that to happen would be K to be true while S is false, or K to be false while S is true. That's not particularly clear, so let's not go with that. The wedge being false, the only way for this to be false would be for both disjuncts to be false, which means S would have to be true. So we then come back here and we make S true on all the line, and we make R false on all the line. False. It's the only R. And we would find that the only way for this to be false would be for K to be false. So we come over here and make this K false, which would make that false, and that would make that true, and true horseshoe true is true. And so what we would find is we would say, okay, that would be the main operator, and it's possible for it to be true. And it's made for this main operator to be true, and then the conclusion to be false. So we would say that this can be proved to be invalid, because this can work out. Okay? And that's all you do. But what you can also do is you can use this, and if you find a line in which, no matter how hard you try, you cannot prove it to be invalid, then you have to conclude that it is in fact valid. And so what happens is you can come along here like with this one, and assume P horseshoe Q is true, and Q horseshoe R is true, and P horseshoe R is false. Well, the only way for P horseshoe R to be false is for P to be true and R to be false. So go over here and make R false, and then come over here and make P true. Okay. Now, in order for Q to be true, or this to be true, with this being false, Q would have to be false as well. And if that was false, then we would have a problem here, because that would not be false. So we simply highlight that, and we would circle it, and we would put doesn't work, valid. And we'd write that on. Because what's happened here is we haven't been able to create a line in which the premises are true and the conclusion is false. We haven't been able to create that kind of line. Now the only other thing to keep in mind is that in some cases, as you come along, you may find that you can't just do it in one line. Like this one, in order to true it, you're going to need to do 2 lines. And sometimes you'll have to do 3 lines. But the idea is that it's a lot easier than doing 32 or 64 lines. And so what you do is it's basically just sort of a guessing game. And it's kind of fun, and some people find it really frustrating. But if you like doing puzzles, most people will find it fun. Okay? Have a good time.